Okay, welcome back. And what we're going to do this hour is shift gears considerably, but maybe not so much. We're going to go back in history and take a look with our guest at a, well, I guess you'd call it a hidden aspect of human evolution on this planet, human history. A part of human history which interacts with a relatively harmless little piece of vegetation we call mushrooms. And James Arthur is rapidly becoming one of the world's foremost authorities on this very eclectic way of looking at human discovery of all sorts of things inner, and they have been accomplished and done by let's talk to James and get the details. Welcome back, James Arthur. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jeff?
Fine, thank you. What is the name that we have for the kind of work you're doing, your research? What are you officially?
Well, my particular field is Ethno-Mycology, and it's a subgroup of entheobotany or ethnobotany.
Uh-huh.
It's basically the study of plants and different things, and my particular favorite plants are mushrooms.
Uh-huh. And what was it about mushrooms that got you so interested early on? And when did this start for you? Well, an unusual thing for anybody.
Yeah, it started when I was really young. It wasn't necessarily the mushrooms themselves that got me so interested. I mean, it wasn't because I looked at one and said, ooh, that mushroom, that's really neat. I never really had a like or dislike for them, particularly in foods or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
It was mainly when I started studying UFOs and religions that I came across the interesting little things.
What was it that caught your attention?
Well, it was
the fact that they were pictured in old illustrations or talked about. What was it?
Well, back at that time, it was because of Marco Allegro and Gordon Wasson, who'd written a couple books talking about how they were used in ancient religions. And at that point, I went, well, that's interesting. What do you mean they're used in religions? And so I started looking into what those people were saying, and it just fascinated me, and so I started studying into it deeper and deeper, and I found out there was a whole wealth of information that hadn't even been uncovered yet.
How many types of mushrooms will create in the human mind aberrations that we might call visions, leading to, I guess, self-discovery? Some people want to call it that, but they are a trip.
Well, there's over 100 different types of velocity or psilocybin or psilocin-containing mushrooms.
100?
There's over 100 different varieties, and they grow all over the world, under different trees, on grasses, on tree bark, on lawns, on cow pies, which are the most famous ones.
Uh-huh.
And then there's several varieties of the Amanita mushrooms, which are ones that grow under the pine trees, which we've talked about before.
Yeah, no, those are probably the prettiest ones.
Yeah, they're really fantastic. When just finding them is such an exhilarating experience. Once I started getting into the entheogenic aspect of these plants and started actually going out and finding them, I found a whole new world of fun and enjoyment just in going hunting mushrooms. And so I started getting into all the different kinds and found out about the edible ones and all the different rare and exotic edible ones.
Now, you do have to be real careful. We don't want people going out. Please, people, don't go out and find something you think looks pretty neat and eat it. This is not what we want to do here.
Yeah, there's some mushrooms that will kill you pretty quickly. And you definitely don't want to go pick and eat anything unless you know for sure what you're doing.
All right, now, how many ancient religions have you so far been able to ascertain have actually used in one ceremony or one initiation or one rite or another mushrooms?
Well, I've never actually counted how many, but the reality is that all ancient religions used some sort of an entheogen. The mushrooms were a big one, as wherever they had mushrooms. Well, down in South America, of course, they used mushrooms, but they also used plants that contain DMT and harmaline and telepathine and different chemicals that.
Now, there is an interesting word. I'm going to hold you on that one. Did you say telepath?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's a chemical that's called telepathine, and science has tried tried to change the name of that from its original discoverer. They called it telepathine because of what it does to the mind. Creates telepath.
Who wants to change it?
Well, general science has tried to turn it into harmaline. So isn't that interesting? Here's another play on words. Now, let's not call it telepathine. People might want to do it, but let's call it harmaline and make them think that it hurts them, which is just a totally great, typical example of what science wants to do to humanity in propaganda regarding these plants and chemicals.
All right, well, they may have stubbed their toe on that one because harmaline can also mean harmony, as in oneness and a sense of one with the universe and all the rest of it. It kind of cuts both ways.
Yeah, but for the most part, people say harm. I wouldn't want to do anything that has harm in it,
Got it.
But most religions all over the planet have used different plants as their holy sacrament. And that is a fact that is undeniable. There are thousands and thousands of documents and articles and books written by PhD professors all over the world, and other natural studiers, too, religious scholars, talking about these plants and which tribes use them and how they use them and what they use them for.
Why such a big secret? Why don't we know more about that? We don't. This is something that's almost unknown, as I said in the beginning.
Well, because shamanism, as the world's probably oldest actual sort of religion, you can go back to animism, which is another thing that they called it before that. But shamanism is really a suppressed religious idea. It's been called witchcraft. It's been called sorcery, and people have been murdered for this for years and years and years. And all the major religions that want to tell you, come to us and we'll tell you what God says. Don't go to the plants and talk to God, because you can't do that. That's evil. You're talking to the devil. You must come and talk to us. They don't like their authority usurped by the shamans who say, no, if you need to talk to God, you take the plants, because the names of the plants are the names of the gods. This is the way the ancient peoples thought.
Any of the so-called major religions use plants that you've been able to find out, maybe in the past, that has been...
All of them.
And they've all kind of swept that under the rug?
Well, not all of them have swept it under the rug. A lot of them still use them. And it's sort of like Gnosticism.
Give me an example. One religion we might know about, that the average person might have heard about, that does use plants or something to alter states of consciousness?
Sure, Christianity.
Okay.
I mean, that's the biggest one. Now, Christianity, there's a whole bunch of research going on in the idea of the entheogenic origins of Christianity. And this is what several books have been written about. One of my books has been written about it. John Allegro wrote about it. Gordon Wasson wrote about it. Jonathan Ott, Dan Russell, go on and on and on, talking about people that wrote books like this. Robert Forte.
And what about Christianity has been discovered that does associate it with the taking of some kind of naturally occurring substance which would alter the mind?
Well, the origins of Christianity really go back to ancient Mesopotamia, where we see the original books of the Genesis, the story of the Adama and the Adam and Eve, and the flood, and all these ancient stories. The first stories were way back there. And when they talk about the fruit that was taken to make one wise, in the ancient Gnostic tradition, Jesus is the serpent in the garden that feeds man the fruit to make him wise. Now, I know this probably scares a lot of people and makes them go, uh-oh, what is he talking about now? This is Luciferian, All
right, well, so you're saying the eating of the apple perhaps was a metaphor for something else that was eaten?
Absolutely. It was the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And the tree of knowledge and the tree of life in ancient Gnostic tradition, and many older, like the books of Eden and the books of Adam and Eve, which are apocryphal writings, talk about the tree of life. And the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil are the same thing. And Adam and Eve broke a branch off of the tree of life when they were expelled from the garden, and they planted it, and it became another tree. So there's lots of different stories. And basically the concept is that if you look in the Mesopotamian writings, it was Ea who was the god who fed man the fruit, that opened his eyes. and it was the group of gods or the consortium of gods that didn't want him to do it. So he went ahead and did it anyway, and so this is where we get this whole concept from.
How many different kinds of mushrooms? 100 with the psilocybin as an active component, and then the other that you mentioned, the real pretty one, under the pine tree. Is it the same active ingredient or a different one?
It's different, and there are other things too. I mean, there's other components involved in these things that haven't even been really isolated yet.
There were some kids up in, as we go to a break in, I think it was Vancouver, a couple of weeks ago, that almost died eating something called angel's trumpet.